Hello, heroes. Welcome. Today we're going to have an event where we're going to share with you guys a technology, and we're going to see how technology can help family reunite. So I have with me today Daniela and Enrique, who are from Find My Parent. And this is a startup that use AI technology to help abducted children and parents find each other and reconnect. So welcome, Daniela and Enrique. I feel like I said your name wrong. Is that Daniela or
It's Danielle.
Danielle? I
Danielle.
apologize.
Yes.
Yes.
No problem.
Uh,
No problem at all.
okay. Thank you so much for being here, Danielle and Enrique. So yeah, please tell us. Uh, how did you guys start this technology? Why did you start this?
Yeah, I think Enrique could share a bit about why he had this idea, because it was all his idea.
Yeah, well, I've had a great co-founder with Daniil and a great team behind all this effort. So kudos to everybody in the back who's doing a lot of work, from the beginning to where we are today. So basically, the idea came about. High overview is my daughter was taken from me from my former spouse, and given the Japan laws are basically abduct and never see the child ever again, I wanted to create a technology where my daughter would have be able to use today's technology, which is on an iPhone or an Android, whatever it is, to have the ability of input some data and find me and reconnect. Because kids these days start using technology at a quite young age. So that was the idea, that was the concept, and Danielle joined board soon right after that, and we started kicking off, and yeah, we are where we are today, thanks to her and a lot of team members behind all this.
Sorry, I just want to double check that this actually does go. Like for some reason, Facebook always give me this problem of not able to figure out if it's online, so I have to check it somewhere else. But thank you for sharing that. So just a little bit more clarification. So it seemed you said that your ex-spouse is Japanese or like somehow your case is ruled in Japan by Japanese rule, right?
Right, my former spouse is Japanese, and well, regardless of if it would have taken place in the United States or in Japan, basically, if a Japanese national abducts a child, regardless of which country, either internationally or domestic, basically, the chances of you ever seeing your child are very, very slim. Most of the time is none. So, I'm very fortunate that I now get at least to try to build a relationship with my daughter.
And so it's in your case, it's actually the system legally allowed the abduction, it seems, right? So at the breakup of the relationship, one parent just took the child and somehow legally allowed to take the child, and you had no contact with your child, had no way of finding out where your child was?
That's correct. You don't even have to go through a divorce proceedings. You just have to have your partner, spouse, or whoever you have a child with can legally, yes, grab the child and take off with the child, and you never, if he or she says you never have access, that's it. But legally, you will never have access to that child.
Wow, that's pretty scary. And actually, the situation are not much different in the U.S. So for people that are watching, if you have a child, and especially for mothers that are not married, and the mother get to choose to not put the father's name on the birth certificate, and if she doesn't tell him, he will never even know that he has a child. And then there's a situation, even if you are married and you are on the birth certificate of the child, if you guys break up and if you don't go to court and have a court order, either side can take the child and just disappear, because there's no court order that ruling who can have the child, and both parents can have access to the child. So, one parent can just take the child and there's nothing against the law in that situation. So there's that problem with the system in that situation. So how old was your daughter when this happened?
She was, the last time I saw her was one day before her third birthday. That was the last time I actually saw her until I reunited with her several weeks back.
So I guess I'm curious in terms of like the technology that you guys developed and what helped you reunite with your daughter. What kind of age are we talking about where children can start participate and using this?
I think Neil can address that question very good. She's been working diligently on that.
Yeah, I would say right now, probably preteens, maybe 11, 12, right? So children that can read and write. Children these days, are using technology every day at very young ages. But it is a big goal of ours to make sure that this technology is accessible to all children. And so we're working very hard to make sure that the mobile app that we've developed is accessible to young children by using, age appropriate language, age appropriate kind of designs and things to keep them engaged. But I would say right now, preteens, but we do really take pride in being a child-centered organization. And so it's a big goal of ours to make it accessible to all children. And I should also add in all languages. So right now we've done a lot in English and some Japanese, French, but we really would like to expand this technology to the entire world in every local language that we can.
So in the chat room, Justin said, "What is that app?" And so I assume it's called Find My Parent.
Exactly. So if you're interested, right now we're still in beta testing. It should be released in about 10 days to the public on the App Store and the Google Play Store. So if you're interested in checking it out and being one of the first testers of the app, you can go to findmyparent.org/app and you can register your interest there. And basically what the app is it is a way to reunite children who have been abducted, alienated with their parents using artificial intelligence technology. So what happens is a child or young person, it could even be a young adult, it doesn't have to be a child. They create a profile in our app. They add in all kinds of details about themselves. So maybe like when they were born, their favorite color or their pet's name, where they went to school, and pictures. And they can add in information about their family as well. And they don't actually need to know about the left behind parent or the alienated parent. They could only put in the abducting parent side of the family. And the other parent would do the same. So it's all user generated data. We're not grabbing data from the internet or anything. People are creating their own data. Empowerment is a very important part of it. So the abducted, the parent who's left behind or the alienated parent goes on, creates a profile, adds pictures, and creates profiles, basically connects with their profile relatives of the child, of the abducting parent or alienating parent, as well as their relatives, grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles. And then the technology matches those two people based on either facial recognition through the photos or data matching. And then both are notified of a match. So people only can know if their parent, child, or relative is on if a match is made, and then they're notified, those two individuals. People cannot go and search for each other on the app. Then there's a match that's made, they're notified. Then they have the option to communicate. Both must consent to that via the platform.
And another part of the technology that includes, and which I think is essential that we talk about, is, and I'm glad that we're incorporating this technology into the functionality, is that, now that I've reconnected with my daughter and she's shown me around her house using FaceTime, I've noticed that she has a lot of pictures that I also have, that when she was a baby, and obviously I'm not in those pictures, but our cat is. But these pictures, our technology can also look at these images and be like, okay, Enrique has these images that he uploaded to the portfolio or to Find My Parent, and we can start looking at those images that match, right? And if there's duplicates of profiles, we're like, hey, like there's a probability correlation that there's some relationship.
Okay, wonderful. So yeah, you're trying to match data and as well as looking at the images. And so the data are collected from both the child and the parent, and then that create the match. So you mentioned that it's in beta. Is it on Android or is it iOS?
Both platforms.
Okay, so it's on
but it
both
is a mobile app right now. Yes, it is a mobile app, and we envision in the future we would create also basically a browser version that you can access via a laptop, a computer. But right now, mobile app.
Okay, thank you. Justin Miller in the chat room said my son was 3 using a tablet. Yeah, children do start using technology very early today, and we all have access to technology, and so yeah, that makes sense. What about consent? Because now you're dealing with children that inputting all this data. How do you overcome that aspect of it? And especially when a child is being often controlled by the alienator or the abductor.
Yeah, well, I think the first part is the child has to decide that it's something that he or she wants, right? I mean, and I think both parties, like this is not a matching if people do not want to be matched with their parents. So there has to be some motivation and movement basically from both parties. So basically there is a way that children can use the app, and basically, if I'm not mistaken, that it's the other parent who still has often legal rights is basically providing the consent for that child. Again, none of the information on the app is public. Nobody can go and search, for a child or an adult either. It's only the person that they're matched with is notified, and both must consent to communicating via the platform.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the child, I get it that the child have to want to, but obviously the child is underage. So you're saying that the consent would come from the parent, but that is only if you have a match. If you don't have a match, this child have entered privacy information, even though it's not shared to the public, it is to you. So how do you overcome that legal, liability situation?
Yeah, we take all reasonable steps to get consent from the child. There are some ways when you're dealing with certain crisis situations and children that have gone missing, that there are some ways to gather data if it's not shared publicly without getting, the express consent that we usually would get in other situations. And we do have a full, a legal team that's looking at all of the aspects of this. We are working on trying to get this technology to big players like the United Nations. We've been in talks before with the Department of Homeland Security. So we are, very aware of the various data protection laws. It's about consent, but it's also about data protection is very important, and child protection as well. And so we are working with our legal team to build basically the strongest system that will protect children, but also empower them at the same time.
Yeah, I can see the challenges that you guys potentially are facing. So in the chat room, Rachel asked, what about Hague Convention? And Paul said the Hague Convention is obsolete. Over here in England, the police and the MP couldn't do anything. So in Japan, when my son it's a disaster. Yeah, do you have any comment about Hague Convention?
We have heard this comment time and time from parents, and we've spoken with officials and decision makers. And I very sadly say that some believe that the Hague is, they're doing great because Hague cases are going down. Especially if you talk about Japan, the reason that Hague cases are going down is because nobody trusts the Hague because it doesn't work. I have personally known many parents who had their children abducted nearly a decade ago, various Hague orders of return, and the children are still abducted and then sometimes so severely alienated that even when they become adults and return to the US, they do not want to speak with that parent. So we recognize that, I would say, politicians, decision makers, those who should be protecting children and families they're not doing their job, they're failing at it. And that's why we wanted to use technology. Yes, there are challenges and there are always risks that come with technology, but there are also a lot of risks and challenges if you do nothing. If you do nothing, you sit and you see families ruined, children, grown up with very, very challenging situations. And we know that this affects their long-term development in school, health-wise, their mental stability. And so for us, technology is a way to overcome barriers like the Hague that we don't think are doing enough for families, basically.
And to add to that, if I may, currently in Japan, there's a gentleman that his name is Jack Stone, who The Hague has failed him. The State Department, the United States, has failed him greatly, and he's currently on a hunger strike. I think this is his third day on his hunger strike. 4 years he's been stuck in Japan. Complete failure from The Hague, complete failure from American Department of State assisting him. So it just goes to show that it's not something to be,
I understand. I think in the chat room, Paul is going through the same situation. He said it's really a mess up country. So Yoko said my daughter doesn't want any communication with me, and that's a situation like you just talked about. Is that when children get so brainwashed and so alienated, even technology doesn't help. It is not enough. So I know that you guys have a lot of data and statistic when it comes to this situation. Would you share, how prevalent this problem is?
Yeah, so in Japan, if I want to talk first about Japan, because I know you have some people that are listening and they're affected in Japan. In Japan, estimates are that 24 children lose access to a parent every hour, every day of the year. And that is because sole custody is the only system that exists in Japan. In the US, we know that parental abduction, or let's say abduction by a family member, is more common than abduction by a stranger, even though, we're all raised with stranger danger and, all those kind of awareness at school. The reality is you're more likely to be abducted by a family member. And then if you look past the reported figures, okay, the Justice Department has done various studies, surveys, because the issue is often reporting. Children are often abducted by a family member or parent, but it often goes unreported. Or if it is reported, the police don't take it seriously. This is a family issue. We can't do anything about it. And so when the Justice Department does, I believe it's a biannual survey, they have come up with numbers as high as, around 875,000 children abducted by a family member in the United States. What I can tell you is this is a global problem. It's affecting every single country in the world. And with as globalization, becomes a thing of today, as international marriages become more common around the world, it's probably not going to go away anytime soon. And it often happens domestically. So people often think when they talk about parental abduction, a foreigner married to somebody maybe from the US, Europe, whatever country you're from, they get divorced and that foreigner returns home and abducts the children. But the reality is in most countries, it's actually domestic abduction that's much, much more common. It's less studied, less reported, and less understood. So again, in the US, I would assume that it's much more domestic. In Japan also, the vast majority of children who are abducted are children of two Japanese parents. Even though the government would like us to think it's white men, to be very frank, it's white men abducting their half Japanese children. That's a very beautiful storyline for the government to follow. But the reality is it's Japanese abducting their own children for the most part.
Yeah, that's the thing. When it's unfortunate that we have to deal with a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there. And it's interesting when you peel the layers, you always see that there's people behind it that have motives that really against the children's interest. And like you said, abduction. I mean, all of our audience can relate to this, where sometimes their children are even just 2 miles away, and they still can't figure out if their children's still alive because there's no access, there's no way of finding out. And when there's somebody that just going out of their way maliciously destroying that relationship, it's not the distance, it's not across the continent that's the problem. It's that parent, that person is a problem. So tell us, so this is going to be, so right now it's in the beta and you're looking at release in about 10 days. And the app, does it cost money? How does it work?
It is currently free, so anybody can go ahead and download the app, and it will always be free for children. That's something we can commit to. And I would love to add as well, Petra, especially to this person that commented that the issue is also alienation, right? And that child not wanting to actually have, communication or relationship with a parent because they've been alienated. So obviously, Find My Parent, our core mission is creating this technology. But actually, we would love this technology didn't have to exist. And we can't just provide a solution without looking at the root causes. And so in addition to this technology, we do a lot on the advocacy side as well. We have a podcast called Your Double. You can, find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on our website, findmyparent.org. And I know, Petra, you've been a guest and you've shared some great information. We host parents, experts, professionals to come and talk about parental alienation and abduction, and that is part of awareness raising. And we're really proud that in just about a year and a half, we've been able to reach about 20,000 listeners per episode. So it goes to show, this is at a global level, that parental alienation and abduction are important topics for parents and families around the world. Then we also have a knowledge hub on our website where people can go in and search for all kinds of information, resources in many languages. And they can search by language and country as well, because a big part of our mission is to empower parents and families through access to information, through access to the right resources. We're also looking to partner with, like-minded organizations that can provide services and support for families who have experienced abduction. And then we do quite a lot advocating with decision makers, and our most current efforts have been focused on Japan. And if you actually go to our website, we have a campaign targeting the US ambassador in Tokyo, who has newly been appointed. He's been there, I think, less than 6 months. And basically, we've been meeting with embassy officials to ensure that they know the situation of American children, and really all children abducted to Japan, and that they actually do something about it. I mean, we're really sick of year after year hearing about children being abducted in Japan. So people can go to our website and they'll see a banner at the bottom with Rahim Emanuel's picture. They can click on it, and there's a letter that they can actually, they can personalize and then send. And if they're American, it would not just be sent to the embassy, but it would go to their local politicians. So their senators, their representative, the ambassador, United States ambassador to the United Nations, Human Rights Agency at the UN. And then for other nationalities, it would go to their ambassador in Tokyo, as well as the US ambassador. So it's a way to really make sure that decision makers understand the problem, and that I want them to remember it every day they wake up and every night before they go to sleep, because these parents and children, that's how they feel. And they should be remembering that. So that's some of the other work we do aside from just this technology we've created.
Yeah, I do know that you guys are pretty active in advocacy work, because, for example, the audience know that we've been really focused on pushing back against Caden's law with regards to aspects that have been very damaging to victims of parental alienation. And you guys, Find My Parent, is one of the organizations that endorsing our position, our statements, and we appreciate your support there. So let's talk a little bit about so parents going into there and they're filling in the information. There's no way to know if there's going to be a match, right? So let's say if a parent putting in the information and then they don't check the app for maybe a year or 2 years, because sometimes it doesn't take the children, it takes the children alone. Then maybe the parent forget about that app, your app. And then so how do you, find a way to make sure that when the child finally, because the timing is not always perfect, right? So how do you then reconnect the people, I might uninstall the app, after a year, I don't hear anything. So what are you doing to then find a way of reconnecting them?
Well, when most parents sign up for the app, they would use their email address, right? And then so they would, and I would hope that they would be checked. Most of us check our emails 100 times a day, or at least I do. So that email, would get a notification from us, you should come check the app, a match has been made, because we do understand for some parents that it can be extremely emotionally tolling. So it's not necessarily they want to be checking that app every week and reminding themselves of the pain and distress they've been through. But they would get a notification through email that would basically notify them they needed to check the app. And you're right. They will until child is on there, and we understand, that's not ideal, but it's very important. We find that, that both parties want to rebuild the relationship, and that's why we're doing as much as we can. And we also really appreciate all the work you're doing at Victim to Hero to spread awareness among young people about parental alienation, so that kind of light bulb goes off and they realize what has happened to them, and then hopefully, ideally, would want to go find that parent.
So ideally, you want, I guess it's probably most effective for children that are a little bit older, it seems, right? Do you require the children to also enter their email address, or how do they sign up?
Is that right, Enrique? They also enter their email address or phone number?
Yeah, right now they have an intern email address, but we're working on ways that we can, in order to register, is at least the easiest way for a child to sign up. We're working on different ways, like either just a username or something of that sort to facilitate that, because we understand that some children who, for example, let's say a 9-year-old who does not have access to an email or whatever, wants to sign up for this and hopefully reconnect with a family member that's kind of that's always been part of the plan as well. So we have different stages that we want to, as we start building the application, updates.
I mean, it's also important to note that like mobile apps, or at least our mobile app, it's not a static thing. So yeah, as we grow and as we learn from parents, like I really want this app to be something that is effective and helpful for parents and children. Really, really, so we will learn from what parents need, what from children need, and we will adapt it. This will never be, a static thing that we deliver and then it's gone. There'll be constant updates to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think in terms of this is not concrete data, but typically children that are younger, let's say up to around 9 years old, they do get alienated, but most of the time the alienating behaviors tend to not affecting them so much. So you may have a parent that try to interfere with the relationship, but the child still love and want to have the relationship with the other parent and expressing that. So I think the app is good in that sense, because then the children actually actively want to reach out to the other parent. Yeah. We found that from around 9, 11, actually like early teen is when alienation tends to happen most severely. Most of the most severe case happens starting from around that age. 9, usually actually 11 to about 14 is when alienation can get really severe. And then after that point, if there's no proper intervention, the child gets stuck in that severe alienation mode, and that can carry on for the rest of their life. And so they won't be participating in the app, obviously, because they have no interest in the other parent. But if you have intervention, or if there's some, and we've done research and we found there's certain triggers that help the children to kind of recover and wake up, that happen kind of a bit later, usually into their adulthood. And if they're the right triggers, then they could wake up and they start to become curious and wanting to reconnect. So then the app, I think, is particularly helpful there, because one, they are adults, so they actually at the age of consent, so they can actually reach out, and they have email address and things like that. I think that's really helpful. For example, for me, I found my father, I guess, would be the way similar to what I would do with the app is, putting in, so I Google for his name, and I put in a bunch of other information that I know, like the last city that I know where he lived with, and my name and all that kind of thing. So I guess that the app is particularly helpful there. I think the challenge still is, the middle somewhere, where one, they don't have consent and they still under the control of the alienators, and two, they don't really have emails that they check regularly, and three, they, they may be under so much influence that they themselves don't really want to. And I guess that's still the challenge. And I hope that you, over time, with your data and your research, you find solution that can address that corner, I guess, that segment. I know in the chat room, Pri is asking about what about abduction at the airport? So I would say, and she said that we know of this planned trip and abduction, but authorities want a court order and do not allow if the divorce and custody case is in court already. Okay, so Pri, if you don't have a court order, that's very challenging because, like we talked about at the beginning of this, if you don't have a court order, either of the parents can take the child and disappear essentially, and there's nothing illegal about it until you can serve the other party and have a court ruling and have a court order that allow you to have the child. It's very challenging. And if you do have a court order and you still have parents' right with the child, then you do have a say in not allowing the child to have a passport and not allowing the child to travel. And you can put, Amber Alerts and that kind of things in. So yeah, that's kind of challenging. I don't know if you have any things that you wanted to add to that.
No, go ahead.
We know several cases where even with a court order, the other parents allowed to travel with the children and they never return. I mean, I think I saw a news the other day on the, I think it was I forgot where I saw the article where a Vietnamese couple about a court order traveling over summer to Vietnam, and the father was concerned the children would never come back. I mean, we've heard of many cases of this from several individuals where it has happened where the other parent takes the children, they actually disappear and never come back after this court order was issued temporarily to go ahead and travel. So that is a concern, and unfortunately, there's it's difficult to assess an individual's what their real and intentions are when they want to travel abroad, right, with the children. So, and yeah, right, yeah, that's a problem. Is you have to get some kind of order that prevent the travel, or unless if you have a court order that specify the preventing traveling. Yeah. But even then, like, for example, I know of some cases where even when there was a court order that, a parent had full custody of the child and the other parent was going to travel with the child, and there was a court order issued saying that they could in fact travel, that the child was never returned. Right. That's why the system failed. Clearly, we do know that the system does fail regularly. So with my custody order, in the court order, the written language is that if I wanted to travel, I have to know, like, either party, if we want to travel with the children outside of the border, I think, we have to notify the other parent. So only notify, we don't need to get approval. It's only like, so then in that situation, nobody can stop me because all I have to say is, hey, I'm taking this child to whatever country. But yeah, like you said, there's a situation where, and then Pri is saying this parent does not follow the law. Yeah, that's a problem, is when you have the system that failed, that there's law that prevents certain thing. And like you said, and like we talked about earlier, Hague Convention failed many times. Even you might have a recovery order that said, the child needs to go back, and it's never enforced. And that's a problem. We have like failure of the system in many layers. And that's unfortunately is a problem. So you guys also have some other apps, technologies that you're trying to work on. Do you want to share about that?
Yeah, absolutely. For Japan specifically, we're developing a co-parenting app because, like we said, it's a country that has only sole custody. There are some parents that voluntarily decide to have joint custody and to co-parent, but it's not a very common thing. And so that's what we see as sustainable change, because yes, we can advocate and pressure decision makers to change systems, but as we just mentioned, systems often fail. And what we really need is a society that is is advocating and supportive of co-parenting, because the reality is we all know that it is much better for the child. And then as for the Find My Parent app, we had always envisioned when we started this that we could replicate this technology to help other children and families who have become separated or gone missing for reasons other than parental abduction. So victims of human trafficking, forced migration, natural disasters. Because again, the technology, it's the same, provides the same purpose. It's just that the reason for, going missing or being abducted or etc. is different. And so right now, we are developing an app for Ukraine called Reunite Ukraine, and we expect it to also be launched in about 10 days. The same exact type of technology, the same profile creation, and it basically would allow Ukrainians who have become separated, and it could be two adults, it doesn't have to be a child, right, that have become separated, perhaps been killed during the conflict, for them to do effective family tracing, basically, and reunification, because that very often happens in times of crisis, humanitarian crises. And the current systems internationally they're not reuniting families fast enough. I've read stories of 6 years after wars in Africa and the Middle East, and families are still not reunited.
I think that is going to be so helpful because, with what's going on in Ukraine, we all are very anxious watching, and we're all very concerned about the situation and family broken apart. So I think it's so important for you to develop that technology. So a very good friend of mine, who is a CEO of Gift Global Initiative, their team have been on the ground in Ukraine from day one, and they have people in Ukraine that they need a way of data entry points on the field to help reconnect family. So we connected you guys. So I hope that can help more families out there. But yeah, so thank you for your work there. So is there anything else that we should share today? Is there anything else that you guys wanted to add?
I mean, I think I would just leave with a note. I know many of the listeners might be alienated or left behind parents themselves. And I know that the systems often work against us. And that, I mean, I am not myself affected, but I have 2 children. I cannot imagine the pain that you go through waking up and going to bed every night without your children. I would just really encourage you to look at technology, and not just this mobile app. Start asking yourself, do you have for your children and their name? If your children Google their names, what will they find? Will they find you? And what kind of stories, if you do have a website, what kind of stories will they find? Will they find stories about their happy mom or dad that's very positive, or an angry, bitter mom and dad who's very upset with the abducting parent? I think that technology is not used enough. And I would really encourage, and it is accessible. I think if you have the right mindset and persistence, it can be easier to use than the Hague Convention or court orders, etc. So I would really encourage parents to do research. Follow Find My Parent. We talk a lot about the power of technology, and see how you can use it to locate your child, and to also let your child know that you're looking for him or her, and that you're thinking about him or her every day, and you didn't abandon your child.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think we're working on some other services that we can really help parents who are going through this, and on that front. And I think our website, maybe we'll have contact us on our website, and you can learn more about that. I don't think we have a page up ready, but it's something we've discussed internally. We should be publishing sometime soon. But yeah, I think this is an initiative that Danielle has taken with Vincent. And everybody else in the team has done a stellar job finding ways of how we can use technology to help parents reunite. And based on our experience with several cases, if the more you put yourself or your child's information on the internet, they will come looking for you.
Yeah, so that's definitely the same message that we've been sharing with parents, is that because children today have so much exposure to technology and social media and everything, and your children, doesn't matter how alienated they are curious about you. and they will be looking for you. Whether they reach out to you or not is a completely different thing. And so having a positive footprint on social media, on online presence is very important. And so we did do a session where we talk about how do you leave messages for your children using your online footprint. So if you guys haven't seen it, please look for our video in our videos tab on Facebook, Victim to Hero Facebook. So thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate your work. We hope that it's successful because we definitely want more families to reunite. And for parents, please help us share this video, like this video. And if you have any other questions, feel free to comment, because I know that they will still, I'm going to send them the link to this video so that they can check on the comments. So if you have any comment or question about this, feel free to post it, whether you watch this video later or not. And, we'll try to address those questions as we can. So thank you so much for being here, and have a wonderful day. And I know that Yapri is sharing some California law that we can, I'm not sure what it is about, so we'll look at that later. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Petra, for having us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Let me see. I'm sorry. It's